Hey, I'm Double Trouble, and this is Bob.
Hello, guys, I'm Bob.
And we're gonna give you your announcements for weeks
Hooray.
to come. Yep.
Yes. New people.
New people, we
New
want
people.
you.
Well, we want you here.
So, what are the benefits of bringing friends?
Get stuff. You get to enter like stuff into a raffle, and you get stuff out of it. It's like a gift card of something. Of some sort.
Just get a gift. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that accent?
Of some sort.
Yeah, you're not from medieval times, bro.
My bad.
Bro, stop.
What?
Say hi.
Hi.
You don't. Winter camp. 2nd through the 4th of February for middle school winter camp.
Yes.
Yeah, are you excited?
Yeah. I'm going.
Yep, and you should come.
You person out there.
Yep.
You better come.
And high school winter camp is the 16th through the 19th of February. Yep.
Exciting. High schoolers.
Yeah.
Not middle schoolers.
No, not middle schoolers.
I'm gonna be there soon though. Better see me.
Yeah, but a lot of people are leaving.
Yes, which is a tragedy.
We'll take their spots.
Exactly.
And then we're leaving from the middle school group, which is gonna be empty.
Yeah.
A lot empty.
Oh yeah. Man, it'll be nothing like me and Spencer.
Mm-hmm. And core team.
Join core team. It's fun. I just did. It's fun already. Hooray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what you get from core team is you get to learn God. To learn God. Yes. You learn God. And you get more in depth with your spirituality.
Do you get extra snacks?
No.
Man.
You get less snacks.
Dude. How's your grandma?
No. How is your grandma?
My grandma's great, but what about your grandma?
What do you been? What? No. What,
I went places with my grandma once.
where'd you go?
I don't know.
Were you like 2?
We talked. We played categories. I'm so good at categories. But come on. What about your grandma?
My grandma is pretty snazzy. Yeah. I made cookies with her over winter break.
Nice.
See you guys, and how's your grandma? Pound it. Oh, pound it. Noggin. See ya.
Goodbye.
You guys are loud. Well, thank you for that warm welcome. I feel welcomed. Oh, I love you too, Spencer, and everybody else.
Well, he's first.
Well, I'd ask how everybody's doing, but it seems like you guys are pretty excited. So, welcome back to Ignite 2024. Here we go. It's a new year. It's going to be great. I'm excited that I'm going to leave this up here. I'm excited that I get to kind of open up the year with some words. So for those of you that don't know, like Pastor Josh said, my name's Isaac. I'm an alumni here. I graduated 2022, and it's been a crazy 2 years, and I get the opportunity to talk to you guys a little bit about what's going on in my life and just kind of how the way that God moves to hopefully kind of bring some peace of mind and some direction for you guys, especially seniors that are kind of like, the impending doom of graduation is right around the corner. But take heart, because life is great. And for those that are younger and getting ready for whatever the next step is, whether it's moving on to high school or you're moving up middle school or whatever that looks like enjoy it, because you don't realize how fun it is until it's gone. But it's great. So yeah, a little bit about myself. So I grew up in this church. My parents, I'm pretty sure the first Sunday of my life, I was dedicated to the church as a baby. So I've been here my whole life. I was part of kids' church with Pastor Kathy. Those that know Pastor Kathy, she's fantastic. grew up through kids church, went to expedition with the Shorts and the Browns, and that was great. And then now, did my Ignite time, and I was part of the core team. I was a student leader. I was up here doing worship stuff, and I was kind of like, pastor leadership and training, because from a young age I had a calling into ministry. So I knew that like I wanted to go into being up on stage and talking to people because it's so much fun. No, but have kind of a role in people's lives as they're, especially in your guys' age and people my age as well. We have some like college and career people back there, because these are like some crucial years as you guys are preparing to like move on to whatever the world has to offer you guys, and it can be a little scary and you don't really know a lot of things. However, you can have some hope and some comfort in knowing that you guys have a personal relationship with the one who does know everything. So there's a plan for all of that. Let's see. Yeah, so high school time, especially you guys are getting closer to like seniors, it's kind of scary because everybody's kind of looking at you saying, all right, well, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? Because you got to have it figured all out, right? No, you don't. For me, just a little bit about my story. Well, okay, I guess I'll say this. So I'm in the military. I'm part of the Army, Armed Services. My pleasure. I don't work at Chick-fil-A, but it's a great response for everything. So I'm in the military. I joined right out of high school. My grandparents served in the military. My parents served. My sister is serving currently. And then I was like, all right, well, I got to be better than Megan. So, I have to go and serve as well. But I kind of didn't know what that would look like because, in high school, everyone was like, you're going to go to college. What are you going to do with your life? I'm not trying to be here and be like, I'm not a recruiter. There's pros and cons about every step and every place you can go, whether it's college or military or a trade school or something else. You don't have to have it all figured out. For me, military was a great opportunity and a great choice for me. And I get some really, really cool opportunities, which I'll talk about. Because, when you give up some rights and sign a contract for 4 years, you get to do some pretty cool things. Let's see. Right out of high school, I decided I want to join the military, and that whole process, just to even get in, was kind of a lot. With the calling to ministry, I wanted to be involved in some sort of faith. And I wanted to be involved in like church. That's a big thing on my heart because I did all this growing up. So one of the job avenues that I got to go on, because there's a whole lot, military is complicated, and I'm not trying to go all into it. But for me, coming right out of high school with no college, the job opportunity for me that could kind of keep me connected in religion and faith, which is where I really wanted to be, is to volunteer for a job, because you have a job in the Army. Sure, you're a soldier and you have to learn how to shoot, move, and communicate, but you also have like a specialty. It's called MOS, Military Occupational Specialty. Mine is 56 Mike, which is a religious affairs specialist. That's the technical term. Everybody knows me as the chaplain's assistant. The chaplain is like but this is even cooler. So that's so cool. Okay, so as a 56 Mike, it's my job to kind of be an assistant to the pastor. So a chaplain is like he's gone to, college to be a pastor. A lot of the time they have experience in pastoralship and like pastoral ministry in the civilian world, and then they want to come to the military and kind of be pastors for military units. It's their responsibility to kind of provide ethical and moral justification and guidance for people that need it. And it's my job to be the right-hand man for him to help the chaplain and our team, which is called a unit ministry team, to serve people the best that we can from a faith standpoint. Surprisingly, most chaplain assistants are not religious because it's not a requirement, which is kind of a crazy thing. Even being a religious person, I'm kind of a unicorn in that field because I go to church and I love Jesus, and people are like, whoa, and you're a chaplain assistant? That's crazy. Most of the time, you can ask a lot of people, and they're like, oh, I didn't even know we had a chaplain assistant, or I didn't even know that, you guys were religious, because a lot of the time, we're our own worst enemies. So, I had the calling. I wanted to be a chaplain assistant. That whole route was crazy in high school because they didn't have that job. So I had to sign a contract to be an infantryman, which is crazy, but kind of cool. And wait and hope that the military would figure some things out and I could get that spot or that job, which looking back on how the military works was like, I got like a 1 in a million shot, which was awesome. Part of God's plan, because that like really never should have happened. The military is really complex and crazy. But I wanted that job, and I trusted God that he wants me to be in this job. That's the only one that I'm like passionate about and I want to be involved with. And so I trusted that whatever's going to happen over the next year, God's going to provide the way for me to get that job. So what that looked like is in March of 2022, before, a couple months before graduation, we're all excited, don't know when I'm going to ship out. I get a call saying, hey, we have a job opening for you, but you have to graduate 2 months early to make it in time for your job training. And you better have some like computer classes on your transcript, which I didn't. And they're like, yeah, you need like 2 years worth of computer classes. And I'm like, great. So I talked to my counselors. I went to Mountain View High School. So if you're a Cougar, it's the best high school. Their football season this year was crazy. So I got that call and it was like, hey, yeah, graduate early and do these extra classes and then maybe you'll get your job. And I'm like, okay, well, this is where I want to go. This is where I feel God's calling me, so let's do it. Let's see what that looks like. And I talked with my counselor, got everything figured out, threw on some extra online classes that I blasted through in 2 weeks. And then while my class and Alexis was walking to do their graduation, I was 2 weeks into basic training, crying and hurting inside because it sucks. And so that was already kind of a crazy start to my life. I really didn't even get to finish like a chapter in your life as like a high school student and graduate because I was running right into the next chapter. And that was kind of a lot. That was crazy. There was a lot of emotions in that. But overwhelmingly, I'm like, God has a plan for this. He's laying out a path and opening doors for me, so I'm just going to keep walking through them. And so I did, and everything worked out. So then started my initial entry training. That's what we call it, IET, which is basic, and then your job training, AIT. There's too many acronyms, and I'm going to apologize for it now because the Army just loves acronyms. I'll do my best to explain them. You don't have to know them all. But I went to basic training in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and that's like a 10-week program where everybody in the military starts there. It's like your boot camp or your basic. Everybody starts there because you have to learn all your basic stuff as a soldier, how to shoot, move, communicate, do push-ups, and all that fun stuff. So when I was there, I met a really cool guy, and I'm going to talk about him because he's really crucial in like a later part of my kind of story in the last 2 years. His name is Herrera. He's also a 56 Mike. He's a chaplain assistant. And me and him, we actually met together in Portland before we left to go to South Carolina. And so from there, we started kind of building a friendship, and we went we were bunkmates from reception to basic training to AIT. Like we were together all the way through. So we really leaned on each other and kind of builded each other's faith through that. And kind of, it's nice to go through like war and craziness with like another person, a companion. And he's important for later in the story. But we go through basic training. I mean, it's kind of a whirlwind. I mean, if you guys want to know more about it, like, of course, I'd love to tell you about it. But 10 weeks later, in August, I graduated basic training. If there's a picture with like a black beret, maybe, or the weird one with like the teepee hat where I'm hugging with like the green weird thing in my hand. If there's any of those pictures, the pictures are kind of, I don't know if it was working. Like it's like a green book, I'll call it, in my hand. If there's none of those, it's okay. Cool, never mind. So, regardless, graduated basic training in August, done. Like, that was a whirlwind. No communication. I got like a phone call every Sunday for like 5 minutes with family, and that was about it. Got to write some letters, and that was good. And my kind of opportunity for ministry started there with some of my bunkmates and people that I got to talk to, because very quickly I kind of stood out as someone who was different because, I didn't really use a lot of the language that they used or talk about things the way they talked about. And, I'm like spending my nights reading like the one book we got to have, which is the Bible, or like your religious text. For me, it's the Bible because I'm Christian, but reading that and got to read some stories with some guys, and they're all like, well, like, what is this about? They're also kind of curious about our job because it's very unique and rare. It's a very small job field in the Army. got to have some really cool conversations with one of my other bunkmates. Oh yeah, that's really cool. So that's me graduating basic training, and I'm shaking a 1-star general's hand because throughout basic training, I showed some pretty cool like leadership qualities, most of which I learned from the core team here. So you should join. But I got chosen to be a leader in basic training and kind of lead my platoon and my company through some training things, and so I was recognized for that, and I got an award called Soldier Leader of the Cycle. And so I got some coins and some like shout out stuff, and then I got to meet the 1-star general. So he was in charge of like the entire base of Fort Jackson training. Like he's like the top dog about everything. And he came to our graduation, and I got to shake his hand and say hi, and I got a little coin from him, and it was kind of cool. And that's one of the uniforms, the many uniforms we get to wear. It's a weird looking TP hat. I'm glad I don't have to wear that anymore because I have a cooler piece of headgear that. Oh man, the military terms too. Headgear, like it's a hat. There's nothing crazy. Yeah. So graduated. I'm ranting. Let me get back to where I'm at here. One of the conversations I want to have was one of my bunkmates. He was a practicing Muslim. So he was like actively kind of talking about his faith as I was talking about mine. And we got to share a lot of really cool conversations and talk about things. And I mean, growing up in Bend, Oregon and having kind of the bubble we are in, I never really got to talk to anybody like that. And so that was kind of one of the first moments of like really getting to kind of have a lot of really positive discussions and some debate and just kind of understanding back and forth about like what we believe and why we believe it. And that was a really cool thing for me because one of the important things about my job is I'm not allowed to like endorse any faith in my workplace. That's the chaplain's job. It's my job to make sure that everybody can practice the exact religion that they want to practice. So if there's a practicing Muslim and they need like a Quran, or there's someone who practices Judaism and they need like the Torah or the Tanakh or something like that, I'm supposed to provide that for anybody without any prejudice based on my beliefs. So in kind of practicing that, I wanted to like have some good conversation with him and learn some more things because that's my job. Like I need to know those things. So we get through basic training, we graduate, and then we go right down the road to our AIT, which is Advanced Individual Training, where I get to learn how to be a religious affairs specialist or a chaplain's assistant. And again, it's not a religious required job. So I'm learning about some religious texts and a lot of military paperwork because that's a lot of what I do is I do a lot of paperwork. And so I got to learn a lot of those things, but also have some really cool conversations and relationships because our class size was significantly smaller. I graduated with 24 people in my class because it's so small of a job field. So I got to have some really like great conversations and relationships with people, and start to learn like what my job looks like in like the eyes of the Army and how I am supposed to approach things. And then also how can I bring my own faith and my own like experience into however I help like my soldiers and the people that I get to work with every day. During that AIT time, me and Herrera, the guy I talked about earlier, we could run fast and we could do a lot of push-ups. So because of the physical standards that we did good on, we got offered some cool opportunities because in different units in the Army, there's some requirements. One of them is airborne. So they need people to jump out of planes. And that requires a certain level of physical ability. The other one we got offered was RASP. RASP stands for Ranger Assessment Selection Program, which is the selection process for you to join the 75th Ranger Regiment, which is a special operations unit in the Army. So that was super cool. When we got offered that, I was kind of like, I'd heard about RASP. I didn't know it would ever be offered to me because I thought it was only for infantry. Like Army Ranger, that's like somebody who's doing infantry stuff. I'm like a chaplain assistant. How does that apply to me? But this unit, it applies to me. So we got offered that opportunity, and I was like trying to feel it out. I didn't know if I wanted to do it or not. And Herrera was trying to convince me, and I'm like, okay, is this peer pressure or is this like actually from God? And, I called my parents and called Alexis and like, what do you guys think? This is a cool opportunity. Like a door is open to me and I'm like the only one standing here ready to go through that door. based on where I'm at and the training that I had. Something that really kind of stuck to me, because I've always had a heart to be like put in situations that like God wants me to be in, and I don't want to miss out on those. So a verse that stuck out to me during this time in AIT was Isaiah 6:8 that says, "Then I heard the Lord asking, 'Whom should I send as a messenger to this people? Who will go for us?' I said, 'Here I am, send me.'" And in this moment, it was kind of at a standstill, where it was like, okay, who's going to go and be a minister and be an example of Christ to these people in this unit that it's really, really hard to get there for physical standards and other things. And I was the only one at the door. And of course, me being me, I'm like, okay, well, here I am, send me. See how this goes. And a big thing about that too was everything about RASP is really, really hard. Like, it's physically challenging, it's mentally challenging, spiritually challenging. It's like, it's a grueling process to get a finer trained soldier that gets to serve in a unit that has like harder and bigger expectations. And one thing that stood out to me is I didn't want to live my life saying I didn't want to do it because it was too hard. That kind of stood out to me, is I don't want to make the choice of not doing something because it sounds too hard. I kind of was more excited about, even if I failed, at least I got to try, or at least I did it, and the difficulty of it didn't scare me. So I told Herrera I'll be his ranger buddy. That's a military thing. Battle buddy is like your buddy that you go through battle with. But it's your buddy who's like keeping you accountable and on track. And so we became ranger buddies as we volunteered for this program. So we left Little Fort Jackson when I graduated in September 21st, 2022. And immediately we went to Fort Benning, which is now Fort Moore because name changes. But Fort Benning is like going from Relax and Jackson, because it's a thing, because it's soft skill MOSs, it's not infantrymen. Going to Fort Benning, which is the home of the infantry, it's like kind of intimidating because you didn't sign up for this, and now you're about to go into like the belly of the beast. And we showed up on day one to RASP, and very quickly realized that this is a completely different place. And I got the opportunity to actually watch a graduation of a RASP class the first day I got there, and I was watching them put on tan berets and these scrolls and all this history about Ranger Regiment. And I'm sitting there like looking at Herrera, and I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, totally felt like kind of imposter syndrome style, like, is this really for us? And most other people kind of gave us that look too, because 80% of the people that show up there are infantrymen, because that's the place that they want to be. That's the place they get to do the coolest things. And they're looking at us as chaplain assistants saying, what are you guys doing here? Why are you going to go through all of this just to be a chaplain assistant? That doesn't make sense. And it didn't at the time, but things got better. So RASP is the 8-week program that takes a soldier and makes them a ranger. It's broken down into 2 phases. Phase 1 is like the breakdown, beat down phase. That's where you get like a lot of PT, long runs. You just get smoked for hours and hours because they just want you to quit. Because the people who are going to quit are the people they don't want in the unit. Because when the pressures of war and battle get to you, if you're someone who's going to quit on your team in a life or death situation, they don't want you there because people's lives are at risk. So they try to get you to quit in the first 4 weeks because, yeah, it makes you want to quit. It's rough. Once you get out of the first 4 weeks, then you move into phase 2, which is like the training and coaching phase. That's where they take your broken, beat down body and make it into a ranger with a lot of marksmanship training and some demolition training and some like combative fighting training and some really cool stuff like that. But before we got to go to RASP, we had to get through pre-RASP, which is like the pre-phase. That was a 5-week process of just kind of PT, eat, sleep, repeat, daily, day in, day out. But through that time, we got to build some relationships with some guys that we got to go through the process with. And just as we were about to class up and make it into RASP finally and start this whole process, Herrera, my buddy through it all, gets stress fractures and gets dropped from the course because he cannot physically complete the course. And so now he's like crutching away to be with the transition platoon after all this work, And I'm about to class up in the next week, and I'm like, what? Like, I'm only here because of him, and now he's gone, and he can't even do this. And that was a moment where I'm like, okay, like now I have to do this kind of on my own. And that was kind of the first time in our military experience too, because we kind of leaned on each other throughout the whole training, where it's like, okay, now I'm like alone. Like, what am I going to do? But it worked out in the end. And he actually works right down the road from me now, and he's coming back to RASP in the spring, so he'll be there. But once you go through RASP, you earn the Tan Beret and the Ranger Scroll. Just some history about Ranger Regiment, so you kind of understand like what we do. There's a lot of things like I can't really talk about because it's a special operations unit. But like historically, like World War II, the people that stormed the beaches of Normandy and the people that scaled the cliffs of Pointe du Hoc, the people that led those charges were Rangers. We're the ones that have our motto is Rangers lead the way. And we get it because we're the ones that are leading the way on most things. And started in World War II through Vietnam and Korea and then current operations with like the global war on terror and things like that is we're like, when stuff's going down, we're usually the first ones to get the call because of our intensive training, and we're always ready to go. It takes a lot to move like a normal Army unit into action, but we're always ready to go. And so we're like phone call away, and in 24 hours, we have hundreds of Rangers on planes ready to go wherever they need to go, which is super cool. So I started RASP, and a big thing that stuck throughout me again was not only the Here I Am, Send Me, but the chaplain at the time in RASP, crazy, I now work for him or with him, but at the time he was kind of looking around seeing like, we always try to get chaplain assistants because there's like none of us. So we just pull like some other MOS and make him a chaplain assistant for a couple months until they do other things. And so he's just looking for people. And he's like, well, are there any 56 mics here? And I was like, oh, I actually am one. And he was like astonished and like, no way, that's crazy. And so a big thing that he kind of talked about, because throughout RASP, we didn't have a lot of freedom. So we had chapel on Sunday. And a big thing he talked about was do your best and trust God with the rest. That as you're going through this training and this time where life is going to be really, really difficult and you don't know if you're supposed to do this and you don't know if you can like last another day. The biggest thing to remember is doing your best and trusting God with the rest. Throughout this RASP time, our class started with 110 or 120. In the first week, we dropped like 40 people. And our class graduated with 22. So it's pretty crazy. But during this time, I got to build some relationships with some really cool guys. And one of the things I got to do that some of the guys were fond of is I read my Bible most nights because, again, it's like the only book I was allowed to have. So I'm just reading Bible stories, and a couple of my buddies were like, oh, hey, like, are there any cool stories in there that you can like read us because we're kind of bored and tired and we're trying to go to bed. So is there any like good stories? So for about 4 weeks, honestly, of time, every night, they'd be like, okay, what's the next Bible story? And I'd go through like Noah's Ark and Jonah and the whale and like Daniel and the Lion's Den and all like this, the Sunday school stories that I grew up on. And I was like, oh, this is too easy. They were like astonished and amazed because just those stories kind of brought them hope and strength when they needed it throughout the course. Because we only got church on Sundays for an hour, but like there's a whole week of time where they're like searching for strength and meaning. And so I can just kind of give them little tidbits of encouragement and love and pray for them and pray with them and lead Bible study during this training time when we had some free time. And a lot of people connected with that because when you're going through a valley, it's a lot easier to look to a higher power because in RASP, you'll take any help you can get. So if you're not religious, you become religious in RASP. And so I got the opportunity to do a lot of that, which is good. RASP starts with a PT test day one, and like our standards is 58 push-ups, 69 sit-ups, a 5-mile run in under 40 minutes, and 6 chin-ups. And the push-ups and sit-ups have to be done in 2 minutes. And so a lot of people, they start that test and they fail those standards, so they're like dropped. They make it all through that time. Day one, they're dropped. They can't even continue because they don't even meet the standards. I failed one of the events, and so I was part of the group that had to retest in 6 weeks. So now, as I'm going through this RASP time, like grueling every day, like you feel like you want to give up, but I'm going to do my best and trust God with the rest. There's this PT thing holding over me now. I have to perform good on this test eventually, or the next 6 weeks is all for nothing, and I have to do it all over again. So we get through the 3 weeks. Week 4 is called Coal Range. It's like 80 miles in 1 week, land nav, little food, little sleep, a 12-mile ruck. It's kind of the culminating event to make sure that you're like ready to go. And the cool thing for me in my class was right after Coal Range, I was on a plane home for Christmas last year, which was awesome. And it was amazing. So kind of through that time of like, man, I just want to give up, I was just remembering, well, I have a plane ticket that's like, I'm going to be on a plane in 24 hours or however long it was. And so it's like, it kind of gave you some motivation and encouragement because it's like, it's going to end. There's an ending point. It will be over. So I made it through phase 1, got to come home for Christmas, be here, family, kind of take a break as well because your body really needs it. It's pretty broken down afterwards. But then 2 quick weeks later, it's like a wake-up call, and I'm back in Fort Benning for phase 2, and I got to do a bunch of shooting and combatives and other things like that. While I'm doing this, I'm still cultivating relationships with people that I'll get to work with in the future, with talking about my faith. You know, I'm standing out. Military guys are a different breed. And everybody needs Jesus, but they don't get the opportunity really to hear that from anybody. So me and my lifestyle and how I live my life, how I talked about people, how I talked about my relationships and things like that, it very quickly, like I stood out and I was like the outlier. And they're like, well, like, why do you do all that? And so I got to have a lot of conversations about my faith and why it's important to me, and kind of just use my own testimony and some Bible stories as well to kind of pique people's interest in faith, and actually had a couple people after RASP on that last Sunday give their heart to the Lord through that time, and that's all because of Jesus. Like I don't take any credit for it, but being able to kind of talk with them and pray with them and kind of give them some encouragement was really cool. We actually got to hold a baptism thing after graduation, which was a lot of fun. And at that point, my chaplain or the chaplain at the time, was like pretty convinced that he definitely wanted me. So he like put the word in and was like, yeah, he's mine. He's working for me now, which was super cool. So now I get to work with a really cool chaplain. And after 8 weeks, 10 weeks, including break, but 8 weeks, I got to graduate. I put on the tan beret and the scroll. And if there's a picture that has a tan beret and a scroll, yeah, there we go. So that was me at the end of graduation. And so now I get to wear that instead of the weird teepee hat. Which is so much cooler. And so now I was a Ranger, religious affairs specialist in the 75th Ranger Regiment, which is what that first picture, you see that first picture, the one that looks really cool with the tactile guy holding the Bible. With the Bible, he's like holding the book. It's like the 56 Mike religious affairs specialist, and he's got like nods and helmet. The very first one. Yeah. Well, whenever he gets up there.
Come on, Trevor.
Yeah. So now, so this isn't me, but this is kind of like one of the motivation things of like pulling me into this unit was like now, not only do I get to have a role in faith and get to preach somewhat and be involved with people's walks and faith and be someone who can like cultivate relationships. I get to do that while looking like that, which is really cool. And I get to do it with people who went above and beyond and volunteered for harder things. And so they're people that really, really care about what they do and are really involved and invested. And in the nature of our job, there's a lot of extra stresses and kind of hurdles that they have to battle and go through. And so I get to, along with my chaplain, help them through those things with like family or relationships or personal things or whatever like that. So it's a really, really cool place to be. And then boom, right after RASP, I went to airborne school. So eventually, we got the opportunity AIT to do airborne or RASP. Because we're Rangers, we're also airborne Rangers. So we got to, like that, we fall out of a plane. We get to jump out of planes. It's not like Halo or free fall. Hopefully I get that. That's kind of cool. Where you're like actually skydiving. This one's like, it's called static line jumping. And you have like a line connected to your parachute and you like hand it off and then jump out the door. and then your chute's instantly pulled, and then you just fall and try not to break your legs. Tuck and roll. Exactly. It's like the banana. So I got to get airborne school, and that was a lot of fun. It was kind of a 3-week vacation based off what I did in RASP. And from there, I got to try to have a big impact on the couple guys that I was with. Like I went through all of RASP with them, and now we're kind of bunkmates in airborne school, getting through this school. And they're making, now that we have freedom and they have the ability to make choices, they were choosing things that can get them in trouble and things that are dangerous. In our unit, one of my chaplain's kind of favorite jokes is alcohol and women and drugs are job security for us, because those are the things that can cause issues in our guys' lives as like a bunch of macho men. So they're kind of making some interesting decisions, and I got to have kind of a say in their lives and try to provide some context to like, hey, let's try to go to something or turn towards something that's better, because a lot of what they can do like could get them in trouble if anything happens. So I got to have more of like an example style relationship with them or connection with them as I'm trying to encourage better behavior and more positive behavior. And in that time, getting to pray for guys and pray with guys and continue to read the Bible. And now actually I get to kind of work close with one of them after all these years or months. And that's really cool, because the connection that we had, I kind of maybe brush it off as like, whatever, it's just kind of my job, but it's also what I do. But for him, I didn't realize how much of an impact it had for his life. And he's really cared a lot about that too. So a big point, or a big kind of turning point after the end of RASP and Airborne School is kind of what I want to do with my life now, because now I have the opportunity to stop training somewhat. I had to go through Ranger School, but that's another story. But stop training and kind of see what I want to do with my personal life, because now I can start looking at college and other things. And a big driving force, not only for God's plan for my life of why I wanted to do RASP and all these things, is these units and places take care of family, and they have a big kind of prioritization on family and wanting to take care of guys with family, because it's an important commitment that you want to make, and that these guys make. And so being in this unit, I have like the best chance and the best opportunities for my own life and my relationship with others. So at the time, my girlfriend, now, and I can say this because this is my first sermon as a husband. My gorgeous wife, this was a moment for us where we decided, okay, once this final training thing, Ranger School, is done, we get to look at what marriage looks like for us and when we can do that. Our initial plan going to the military was 4 years, see if I'll get out. We'll see what we do then. Give it to God, trust Him with our plan. And after doing all these crazy, ridiculous things, when God opens doors and I walk through them, that date kind of seemed like it was coming a lot closer. And so we continued to trust and give it to God. A big moment was we had a conversation of, once Ranger School's done, we'll look at marriage. That'll be our sign from God. Okay, all the trainings I need to do are done. When will marriage start for us? I didn't know. My understanding it was going to happen in a year or two. But the next day at church, my chaplain said, hey, I talked to your leaders, and they really liked what you did in RASP, and they like you as a person, so you're going to go to Ranger School in 3 weeks. And we're like, whoa, this went from like 2 years to 3 weeks. And that was kind of crazy, but it was kind of a sign from God of like, hey, this is happening sooner than you think. And so I went through Ranger School. There's some, oh yeah, that's sweet. I have some grueling stories of that too, but we don't have time for it. So anyway, I graduated Ranger School in July, and that was kind of our sign of like, well, here we go. Now, like we agreed on this. We said this is our plan, and then God surprised us and made it happen a lot sooner. So we'll just trust with that and take it as a sign that we're moving in the right direction. And so the last 6 months, now that I've been actually doing my job in the unit that I'm in with some really cool people, is I get to make connections with a lot of people, build relationships. I get to lead Bible studies and chapels for guys going through the exact process that I went through. And I get to work there and talk with them as they're going through the RASP program. And I guess the last couple of things I want to the takeaways is I had a calling into ministry, and for me that looked like being in the job that I'm at right now in this unit in the military, and that's going to look different for all of you guys. And those who have a calling to ministry and it's going to be pastoral, like related, is fantastic. Like we need pastors, we need good pastors, but all of our kind of job from God is to be fishers of men, to be disciples. And you can do that everywhere. You need to do that everywhere. Chaplains and pastors alike can have a very broad influence, but sometimes it can be very shallow because there's a lot of connections that can be made, and it's hard to reach everybody. But you, in your own individual job with whatever you guys are doing, or at school and your friend groups and things like that, might have a very narrow influence. You're not influencing the entire school, but the influence you have with your 3, 4, 5, 10 friends that are really close is super, super deep. And the way you live your life and the way that you interact with them and show them love really has an impact on them. And that can start now. One thing I loved growing up is I didn't wait till I was older. There wasn't like a thought of waiting till I was older. And I got the opportunity to baptize some of my best friends growing up in high school because of the example and the love that I wanted to show them. And I started that now. And so that's my challenge to you guys is you all have, like, we call it like the Great Commission is like your great job is go and be fishers of men, love people, be disciples. And you can do that now. It starts now. And you can have that deep impact on people's lives. And in the ways you interact with people, you can draw them to God. I get to do ministry in a crazy, dangerous place with some really awesome warriors and the toughest soldiers in the world. But you guys have your own sectors and like bubbles where you get to do that with the people that you love and the people that you get to interact with. And don't take that lightly because it has an impact and it's really powerful. And that's where it starts for you guys. So as you're moving on to high school or college or whatever else the future holds, or just moving up to the next grade, trust that God has a plan for your life, because he does. The last 2 years for me have shown that God has a plan for my life, even if I didn't even know where I was going. But he did. So trust God's plan for your guys' life, and don't forget to love people along the way, and you'll be pretty excited and happy and surprised where you end up. So, yeah. We love you guys.